Welcome to Routing for Success, the show where we interview today's top logistics professionals, giving them a platform to share their stories and best practices. Today we are talking with Juan Tetuan. Juan operates 70 daily routes as an independent service provider for FedEx Ground via his company, Tetuan Enterprises. He's a winner of the FedEx Entrepreneur of the Year Award. Juan first started as a single truck contractor with RPS in 1989. In this episode, we talk about the importance of maintaining a healthy company culture, strategies for promoting safety, Juan's perspective on the current slowdown in package volume that many contractors are experiencing across the country, himself included, and how he's using the downtime to improve upon his business. Without further delay, I give you Juan Tetuan. All right, we're here with Juan Tetuan. Juan, how you doing?
I'm doing great.
So thank you for meeting with us today. Before we get into the business side of things, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Where did you grow up? What was your education and professional background before you ever got into the business of delivering packages?
So got into it in 1989. I really had no business being in business. But I heard about it from a friend. It was back in the RPS days. And he wasn't going to pursue it. So I was looking for an opportunity to better myself and my family. I knew I had the work ethic. So I asked him if it's okay if I pursued it. Called his friend, is actually as a family member, I think. And spent a lot of time on the phone that night, probably 4 or 5 hours. And I was in. I had to go to an orientation with maybe 50 people in there. I wore a suit. Everyone else was in jeans and trucker attire. And I got selected. So, I was the winner, right? So to speak. But from then, I just worked hard, just put a lot of time in. I do things. I didn't draw a line in the sand of what I wouldn't do to be successful.
So, and what were you doing before, prior to 1989 when you got into RPS? Did you have a career established at that point, or what were you?
No, I only went to high school, graduated from high school, and then I got in. I loved working on cars. I loved old cars. I wanted to build a car. I wanted to pursue that, body work or working a mechanic. And so I worked for a gentleman who just started his business, and it took off. I was always working 60 plus hours since I started. His business took off so much that he needed to hire a dedicated certified mechanic. And he was a certified mechanic, but he needed to manage. And I was taking a lot of the easy jobs that they call flag time. So that's where a mechanic can do a job quicker than what the posted time is. And that's where a mechanic can make extra money. And so I was stealing that away from him. So my employer wanted to make me a service writer. And at that point, it wasn't really what I wanted to do. So I knew I had to pursue something else. And this came along, RPS.
So RPS, so your friend told you about it. He decided not to get in. You attended the orientation. You won. They selected you.
Yeah.
And then what? How did you, were they giving out territories back then? Did they just give
at that point? Yeah. Yeah. So there was the growth of the company at that point. I think they were 4 years old at that point. They developed a route. Probably wasn't enough to generate enough income to support the route. So I would stick around till everybody left. So basically, everybody sort through their trucks, and if there was boxes that were misloaded on their truck that didn't belong to them, they would throw it on the belt and say, "This is not mine." It goes to a different truck. It was misloaded. So I would wait for everybody to leave, and they'd turn the belt on, and I'd take all those leftover boxes and try to. It wasn't smart because it was all spread all over Kansas City. But in my mind, if I was working, I was generating income. So.
And you had to own your own truck back then. I mean, it was still a contractor model.
Yep.
What did you do for your very first truck?
So I leased it from Bush Leasing. That was who they used at that time. Um, I don't know how many. You had like 3 options to for your payment option, and I took the one that's most spread out, so I could make sure that I can make my payments. It's kind of funny. You get into this, and you. I went to a bank. I remember going to a bank one time and asking them for the down payment to start this business, and I showed them the paperwork that FedEx had given me and said the amount of volume that was going to generate and the revenue. And they said, "Well, how do you know that that you're going to get this amount?" And I said, "Well, because they told me." I was just that naive. So you do have to have a level of naivety, I guess, in business, and just you never know, right? I didn't know, but I was already on the ground floor, right? I was working at a gas station attendant, trying to learn to be a mechanic. I didn't have anything to lose.
So you started with the one truck, you got the contract, kind of doing spot work, supplemental work for the existing operations, right?
Right.
And then what happened? So, obviously at some point you went from 1 to 2 trucks. What did that transition look like?
Sure. About 6 months into it, I got a dedicated route that I wanted to. I was from Topeka originally, and they had a couple of Topeka routes. One guy didn't work out, and then so they offered it to me. I was new. There was other people, but since I was from Topeka, they gifted me that territory. Long story short, they said, "Hey, guess what? We're going to allow you to have multiple trucks." And I thought to myself, "You're crazy. I can barely make 1 truck work. How am I going to make 2 work?" I just said, "What are you thinking?" There was a guy there that started the business. He didn't like it. He wanted to get in insurance, and he had a date that he had to be there. And I told him that I would take over his truck payment, but I couldn't pay him anything for the routes. So he tried to sell it. 3 months goes down the road. He definitely wanted to get out, and he said, I'll take you up on your offer. You take over the payments. So I took over the truck payments and took over the route. And my wife quit her job to become a truck driver for 18 years. So that my first year, I got into tax issues because I didn't know what I was doing. But because of her, it really turned everything around.
That's awesome. You got the spouse on board.
Yeah, she was all in. I kind of get emotional about it, but she did a lot.
That's great. So the RPS days, and for the listeners who don't know, they might think, what is RPS? So RPS was Roadway Package Systems. It's kind of the precursor to what we would know today as FedEx Ground and FedEx Home Delivery. So RPS isn't around anymore.
Right.
But there was I don't know exactly how many, but there was some number of RPS contractors who basically got to transition into the FedEx contractor model. And the contractor model has continued to evolve over the years. It used to be that you would get what they would call a PSA, which was a primary service area, a route. If you needed to add a second truck to it, it would be a supplemental. All of that kind of lingo is gone. Today it's CSAs. But anyway, so you went from 1 to 2 trucks. You got the wife on board.
Right.
Let's fast forward to today, Juan. How many routes are you running today in your business?
We're in 3 locations. We're in Topeka, we're in the Olathe station, and we're in the Kansas City, Missouri station. And they probably average there's 2 locations that run Sundays still. And so I'm probably running 6 trucks at a minimum there on a Sunday, up to 12 trucks on they both kind of range. But my biggest operation is still Topeka. I had at that one point 33%, and I sold a third of it to my son about maybe 3 or 4 months ago. So
just to review those 12, and of course it varies, but 12 trucks in one station. You said you were up to 33%. in another. So how many trucks total? Do you know a figure of how many trucks
I would
total?
say somewhere in that that are on the road every day, maybe 70-ish.
70 out of 3
Yeah.
stations.
Yeah.
So that's a scaled operation. So tell us, I want to talk more about your operation today and some of the things you're doing. But Juan, tell us a story that people might find kind of entertaining earlier, kind of going back, maybe not all the way back to RPS, but, going from 1 to 70 trucks. You've obviously had a lot of experiences in this business. Tell us a story of something crazy that happened to you or a problem that you had to solve, and how did you solve it?
There's so many stories. It's really like blood, sweat, and tears. We've evolved. When I got a funny story when my wife first got into the business. She rode with me. And back then the trucks were full, front to back, top to bottom. And I remember driving, and she was in the passenger side, and we were tag teaming it. And it was raining really hard. And I gave her the scanner, and I gave her the package that says, "Go deliver that." She looked at me. She says, "I'm not getting out in that rain." So I was upset at that point. And then I'm shifting gears and I'm doing it myself. I'm thinking, why did I bring you here? But we went through some hurdles like that. And after a while, she knew that she had to get out there. And then there's other things like when they said you can have multiple trucks, I said, no way, I'm not doing it. And I ended up doing it. It was this regional manager, I remember, would come down and talk to me. He says, "What do you think about this opportunity?" I says, "There's no way, it won't work." And then they offered the home delivery, and he'd come up and they'd have a barbecue. And he says, "What do you think, Juan?" He goes, "Are you interested? You going to do it? Take advantage of this?" And I says, "There's no way, I'm not doing it." And sure enough, I would do it. And so every time something would come up, I'd say, and I just wouldn't even answer his question anymore, because I would always say I wouldn't do it, and then I get suckered into it. But everything has turned out great. I haven't regretted anything. That you just have, your previous guest talked about weathering the storm. I use that term a lot. I think that's you have to find the positives out of this and focus on that.
Yeah. So weathering the storm. So you've been in it since '89. You've been through several, kind of macroeconomic recessions at this point. The stock market tanked in 2001, but 2008 was really the big one that affected everyone across all industries. Yeah. Tell us about that period of time for your business. How many, what was the size of your business going into the 2008 recession? And then what did that look like for you weathering through that?
So at that point, I think I still only had 2 routes, maybe 2 routes and some supplementals. But I think because, like I said, we didn't have hardly anything. I didn't buy a house till I was 40. So because I kept buying more trucks. It's like we had trucks, but we didn't have a house, right? We were renting. So everything, every dime, every penny, we were very frugal throughout our course, even today. And I think that's a reason why we're able to overcome a lot of, whatever requests or whatever hurdles that business or FedEx, it's just because, some contractors are really like upset because of the rules and the changes. And, we have an investment here, and I think we need to get everybody on board, because it's protecting our investment. I mean, we can't I'm a big fan of uniforms, and I may offend some people that listen to this, but if you can't wear a uniform every day, then what makes you think you're going to perform the rest of the job? We're going to have problems. If you can't get out of bed and get to work on time, that's probably the easiest thing you're going to do in life. And you can't wear a uniform, then it's probably not going to work out.
So 2008, you were running 2 trucks. you didn't have to deal with layoffs or downscaling, obviously, with a business that small. So, and you had been in the business at that point for, gosh, 20 years, just about.
Yeah, I might have been bigger than that. I lose track. It grew. I grew pretty quick. So I might have been. We were just in Topeka. I might have had maybe 3 or 4 trucks running. I just lose track of the timeline. But I know that once we got into, I wanted to grow in Topeka, and they said, no, you can't grow in here anymore. You got too much here. I know I was the perfect candidate to do it because when they gave it to me, they didn't have to worry about it. But I also was kind of vocal on some issues at the station that, they just didn't. It's about leverage, right? And FedEx wants that leverage, and I'm okay with that. But I still thought I was the perfect person for the job. So anyway, long story short, my terminal manager says that she wasn't going to allow me to grow in that. And I talked to my contractor relations guy, and he says, well, just grow somewhere else, another building. And so I put my name out there for it. And I think within 2 or 3 months, a free opportunity came up where contractors struggled and he went under, and I went in there and took it over. But there had been like 3 other contractors that had failed prior to that. But, maybe a little naive. I thought I could turn it around. And we did. We turned it around. Great station manager. Everybody was great. And then that guy had another part of a business in Kansas City, Missouri, and that started failing too. So I was very interested in that because I was a little closer to Topeka. It would save like maybe 40 minutes off of a drive going there every day. So I said, hey, look, I'm interested in Kansas City, Missouri, and I'll sell my St. Joe, Missouri, and that's what I did. Worked out pretty good. And then I had another contractor that I'd started out with an RPS. He decided he wanted to get out in the Olathe station. He had been in it a long time, and most of the territory that I have and he have was preferred territory. We've been in it so long that, it was some of the best territory, in-town territory. So I bought that from him. And then that's kind of where we stand right now. And now I'm looking to scale down and hopefully pass it on to my kids.
So you just described a situation where there was an existing contractor who was having a hard time and just not making the cut. And then you came in and you were able to turn the business around. What do you think what separates the two of you? I mean, and even, specifically, I guess, practically in the business, what were some of the mistakes that you feel like that other contractor was making? And what were some of the things that allowed you to come in with the exact same territory, the exact same physical addresses that the packages were being picked up and delivered to, and you were able to make a business of it when this other person wasn't? What separates the two business owners in a situation like that?
Well, I don't know exactly what happened, but if I had to guess, I think a business can run well for a period of time, and I think contractors and owners can get away from it. They step away and they hire a manager and they step away too far, and they're not watching the everyday operation. And when you get away from it, it will get away. And then it's hard to, once your employees don't see you there anymore. I'm to the point now where they don't see me, right? But my manager that I have running it, they see him every day, and it's important that they see him every day. And even though it's running well, I told them they have to be there every morning. They do. We have to be there. We have to show them that we're in it with them. So I think hiring practices. We hire. There's always an ad in Indeed that we, and if we have too many, then we'll pass them on to other contractors that we've friended. We help out. I try to have a core group in each location that we help out, and they help us out if we need to.
So you just mentioned hiring. You also mentioned the importance of having someone in charge. Now, it could be the owner, you, or it could be someone who you entrust to be the person in charge, but they've got to show up every day.
Sure.
So those sound like a couple fundamentals of what it takes to run a successful route business. What are some other fundamental parts of the job that you have to get right if you want to be successful in this business?
What we're doing now, I think the new generation of contractors has to document. So let's just say, I think one of the biggest hurdles for contractors is they blame FedEx and the DRO system for projections. Like let's say I'm supposed to have 1,200 packages or stops tomorrow, and then it comes up short 200 or 150. It's another driver. So I think at one point I was averaging 2 drivers more than I needed to. So at the cost of having a driver for a year and the truck, I think it's somewhere around the 70 to 80,000. So if I was, if I had 2 more average throughout the year, that's a substantial amount of money that could have been in my pocket. But if you don't have a good workforce, you have to kind of overstaff because someone will call in and you have to be able to provide that service. So you kind of take a gamble. You can run that number, but if someone doesn't show up, then you don't have enough people. So it's a gamble, but just getting a good core group. I mean, every contractor has a good core group, and they might have 1 or 2. And I think they underestimate how much that 1 or 2 person with a bad attitude can affect their business. So in the past couple of years, I think we've done a really good job of convincing those bad apples to move on somewhere else. And that's eliminated a lot of the work comp issues, the calling in issues. And we just got a team. We got a better team now. And I think that's huge. I think a lot of contractors think they do that well, but they let that 1 or 2 person, that the drivers, get away with because they can deliver a lot of packages. And I think I'd rather have I need to be able to trust the high level, mid level, and the low level producers.
Yeah, before we started recording this conversation, you and I had spoke earlier in the day, and we touched on this very topic, which is the importance of, not only hiring and keeping people because of what they can bring to the job every day in terms of delivering packages, but there's also those extra things that some people might overlook or not think are important that are extremely important. You're talking about a culture, building a company culture.
Absolutely.
Could you tell us a little bit more about your company? And you can name people specifically if you want to or not, but tell us a little bit about how your company is structured with its leadership, and tell us a little bit more about how those individual roles impact the business every day from a culture perspective.
So I think there's a couple ways to do it. There's some very successful contractors that are in the day-to-day, make the decisions on DRO. They have one guy making all the DRO's decisions on all their locations. Where I like to empower my managers, and then as long as we're making mistakes trying to get the job done, I think that's acceptable. And then we'll through communication. The station's going to communicate to you when we're not performing at the level they want us to. And then we just have to create some standard operating procedures to make sure that we communicate. It's really documentation. It's about tracking that info or that habit, and then creating some procedures and following up. And we have payroll through Paycom, and we're able to write drivers up for some issues, some communication or some driving, aggressive driving or whatever, not wearing their seatbelt. And generally, if you got a good employee, that they'll comply. They'll complain a little bit, but we just have to understand that the safety issue is not going away. It's just not. We have to put our seatbelt on every time the truck's moving.
What does your training program look like? So when you onboard someone brand new, what does that look like before they get behind the wheel?
So I couldn't tell you everything. I've really delegated a lot of that stuff, but I can tell you that we're going to do that. My managers are instructed that these drivers don't go out there until they're comfortable. We need, and when we talk to these individuals, a lot of these individuals have had multiple jobs. There's no loyalty, but when they come with us, they have to come with the understanding. I mean, with the interview, they're saying, yeah, I want the job. And we're like, okay, I hear you, but tomorrow you need to text us or email us because we're going to push you. We're going to wipe the slate clean. I really don't care what you've done in the past. But at some point, everybody has to grow up. And I think this is the moment I need to grow up. And hopefully it's with us. And we need to push them to that point. And I tell them we got a great team. And if they don't comply, then it's not going to work out. We're really honest with them. And I think we've got a lot of young men and women to buy in, for the most part. We got a great team.
That's great. And how do you trim the fat, so to speak? Obviously, if someone gets behind the wheel, they're decently safe. You can't be decently safe. You've got to be safe. But they deliver the packages. But you had also mentioned that those are required. But that's not necessarily even enough on their own to stick around for the long term. So what are some other things that you look for in employees where you may actually let them go or give them an opportunity to leave, even if they're technically meeting the minimum requirements of the job, like we were talking about earlier?
Well, they'll have multiple opportunities. We'll converse with them multiple times before we come to the point where they're just not complying. So it'll definitely be their decision. We're going to keep pushing for them to get better. And when everyone else, if I got 12 guys working that day and they're the only ones that aren't performing at that level, then, I think individuals are more competitive than they realize. And I think everybody wants to be led, but they want to be respected at the same time. So it's really, you get different age groups. They're all different. I think it's just being real honest with them. I think usually in the morning, people are really grumpy. So I'll let them be grumpy and I'll say, hey, what can I do so we can get this done today? And then at the end of the day, I'll call them and ask them if everything is okay. And they'll usually have a different tone. Like, hey, I was just in a bad mood. Wife and I were struggling and I took it out on work and nothing was going to make me happy. And so I think that kind of communication, I get it, not everybody's going to fit in that cookie cutter that we want to, and we have to develop, especially now, these younger generation.
And then, so on the other end of the spectrum, there's those employees who you want to keep. I mean, they just add, whether they're behind the wheel or if you've moved them up in the company, there's always those few employees who do a really good job. And as an owner, you probably think to yourself, man, I'd really like to keep this person for the long term. But then I guess even for drivers as a whole, Juan, what are some things that you've implemented in your business to retain talent?
So I think they just want opportunity. I think a lot of people, when I interview them, they say, I ask them why they left their job, and they said there's not any opportunity. So what we do is we try to develop managers, assistant managers, and then push them on to other contractors that, even though they're quality employees, I think I'll get more bang for my buck if I can show everyone that I'm out for their best interest too, and then I can push them on to another contractor. Maybe I'm solid in my managers positions, but I've got an up and coming employee that fits the bill, but we just don't have a position. I'll pass them on to a fellow contractor that I work with and that has just as good a business. And if my employees see that, then they're like, they just keep working harder.
Now, when you say that, it makes sense, but I feel like that's got to be unique. Are there many other contractors who have that philosophy where they're willing to invest in someone and build them up and then pass them off to someone else?
It's really not that hard. I mean, I can tell you every situation that we have, whether it's hiring, I really think that the failures are from getting away from it too far and really not, they don't really want to dive into the problem to fix it. But is hiring difficult? It can be. But if you had a company and I had a company and you really wanted to hire better than me, you could, because you would, if that was your goal, you would dedicate it and you'd find everything out about hiring. And I won't tell you the secret sauce, but it's not hard. But I've been through a lot of these, other services that tell you how to do it, and they've given the answer. But I don't highlight it to people and tell them, hey, look, they just gave you the answer. But you could figure it out. And so I think I have a lot of confidence that if somebody really wanted to hire well, they could. And it's not hard. It's just you wanting to do it better than me, but I got a good staff, so I don't really need to work at it that hard. I've got an excellent recruiter too.
Well, I found that impressive when you were talking about, so a lot of the people who you interview, you ask them, why did you leave your last job? And they say, well, things were okay, but it just didn't seem like I had any opportunity there. It's a dead end.
Mm-hmm.
I was never going to move up. And so when they come into your organization, at least for those people in particular, if not everyone, you want to show them a path to where they could advance. Or, hey, if you work hard here for a certain amount of time, there is a next level that you can get to. And it may not even be within your organization. It might be for 100%. The contractor next to you, right?
And even get this. So this is what I tell people. I'm like, I'm always looking for good employees wherever I go, grocery store, hardware store, wherever. And there's other business owners in other industries that are doing the same thing. And so when you deliver to a company or somewhere and someone greets you and says, hey, working hard and just small talk. And I see you all the time. You're always running. You're always got a smile on your face. You really like your job. You need to say, yeah, it's the best job ever. It's the best job ever. You just kind of just something different than what everybody else would say. I think today's youth struggles recognizing opportunity. And if they had a great attitude, showed up to work every day, you're already in the top percentile, I mean, I missed probably in the 26 years that I drove, I missed 2 days of work. And that doesn't mean I wasn't sick, but I couldn't afford to take a day off. I couldn't afford to not have that income. And I think, this generation, they want to raise, but you've missed 8 days in 2 months. You know what that equates to? I mean, they're just not processing it right. And they need someone to help them see the bigger picture.
So out of all of your employees, which employee do you have? What's the longest tenure employee who you have right now? How long have they been with you?
Oh my gosh. I think I probably got a guy.
Besides your wife.
Yeah. I think I've got a guy close to 20 years in Topeka. He's worked out pretty well, and we've he has a flat tire in the morning. I go pick him up and I go fix his flat tire. Whether I have to go buy him a tire and fix it for him. I mean, it's a small price to pay, but it means a lot to them. So I've done that a lot. I've helped a lot of them when somebody's struggling, whether it's giving them an advance or, and stuff I don't always get paid back for, but I got to start giving back, right?
And do you feel like those investments in your people, when you talk to other contractors, do you feel like all of that I mean, you were talking about kind of going the extra mile, fixing tires, helping people out when they need it, going and picking them up. And then the other aspects of your business, having a roadmap to advance. Do you feel like that's helped you have reduced turnover overall over the years compared to other contractors who might not go the extra mile or, just go by the book and not do those extra things?
I think either one would work. I think to be honest with you, getting rid of the people that aren't happy. If you're not happy, let's find a place where you can be happy. Because you're complaining, you're tossing packages, you're letting me know you're not happy here. And I hate to see it. I mean, you're just really being honest with them. And some of them turn it around and some don't. I'm not a fan of, I think one of your podcasts said they take drivers, they accept drivers from other companies. We don't really. We have, but I'll ask them, why are you leaving? I mean, it's the same boxes, it's the same apartments, it's the same businesses. I mean, it's not the same name, but it's the same thing. Why are you unhappy? So, but there is some instances. I have city routes, and if I have somebody where the wear and tear of getting in the truck too much isn't suited for them, and they'd rather have more of a rural route, I've done that. We've helped that way. But I don't know.
So we've been talking a lot about employees, and this business, it's not easy, but it is simple. I mean, you don't have to worry about sales and marketing.
Right.
You don't have to have you don't have accounts receivable.
Right.
It mostly just at a very high level, it boils down to employees and trucks. And there's many other things that go into it: safety, DOT regulation, efficiency, no customer complaints. But let's shift to the truck side of things. So you've got, roughly 70 on the road each day. And obviously that's got to cover a very wide range. So, but very loosely, would I be correct in assuming that you probably use a little bit of everything? You've got step vans, trucks.
We have step vans, and we have, like I said, we have the preferred area. So we only operate one bulk truck. So we're pretty fortunate. I have on one of my locations, it's predominantly probably 85% residential. And the other ones, it's probably 60-40, and probably the other two about 60-40. So, but the businesses create stability. I mean, that's the ones that you can count on those deliveries every Monday or every Wednesday. The big orders that come in, but you just you try to find the trends, track the historical data, and plan accordingly.
And how often do you replace a truck? I mean, there's a spectrum of some people who like to do a short-term lease for a couple years, and then there's people who buy a truck and use the thing for 25 years, and they're duct taping it and replacing engines. Where would you say you fall on that spectrum?
Yeah, I think it depends on if you have a city route or a rural route. Those rural routes, I had that in St. Joe, and bought new trucks for them, and after 6 months, 7 months, they looked terrible. And I think maybe probably the lifespan is probably 3 years before, in that fourth year, you probably need to start replacing that rural route truck as an everyday. And you could either sell it if somebody wants it, you're taking care of it, or use it as a spare, pretty much, use it on occasion or use it for peak. But most of my trucks are step vans, P1000s to P1200s, but I like the P1000s because it's not as big and they don't have as much tail swing. I think it's easier to learn. But if I have a high business area, I'll probably use a P1200 with a veteran driver.
You have any P700s?
I do have a couple of step vans like that, and we have one cutaway like that. That does some outskirts, but I like the step vans, to be honest with you. if we can do it in a P1000, that's my preferred choice.
Now, you had mentioned that your son just recently became a contractor. Is it your son or your son-in-law?
Yes.
Right.
The son. Yeah.
So, what was his experience prior to becoming a contractor?
So, he was ornery in high school. Couldn't wait for him to get out of the house. Got in the Marine Corps. That was good for him. And then came back, worked for his friends for a while, and then came to work for me. I fired him. He went to work for his friends again. And he wanted to come back. And I said, why? And he said, well, I've grown up a little bit. I said, you need to grow up a lot more. But he came back. He had changed, but he still had his version of how things should go. And I wouldn't say that he bought into everything I told him, but he did it well enough to keep it afloat. We could have just been so much better had he. Now that he's bought it, it's like the light switch flipped on, and he's doing everything that I asked him to do prior. He's doing it with his business, and it's just kind of fun to watch.
That's awesome. So you've been doing this a long time. He's newer at it. This podcast, I have to imagine there's going to be a lot of people who are either considering getting into the business of becoming a service provider for FedEx Ground, or they're relatively early in their career as a service provider. What are some of the pieces of advice that you've been giving to your son that you might also give to anyone else who's just getting started in this business?
I would say live on as little as you can, unless you have. If you're having to finance the routes, when I purchased this last set of routes, I don't intend to make any money for 5 years. Then after that, then the route payments are done. I can make some money, but it's an investment. Brandon, my son, is hired somebody to manage it, and he's there every morning. But after that, he kind of lets the managers manage. So I think if he wanted to make a little more money, he could manage it and be in the office every day. But it's either or. He's the extra, so it's kind of a security blanket for him to be out of the truck in case somebody doesn't show up. Then he'll get in the truck if he has to. So I think you could do it either way. I would say that I would stay as close as you can. I'd get a mentor, find that veteran contractor, the successful, and they may not be so receptive to help you, but I would take them to lunch or do something, keep bugging them, kill them with kindness. And I think most successful contractors will help you if you keep asking. Yeah, any kind of advice you can get. It's kind of, FedEx is going to leverage you, and then you can't get intimidated by it. You just they have a job to do, and they expect a certain level, and you just need to worry about yourself and be in the top half. And if you're performing in the bottom half, you just need to fix it, right? You just figure out what's going on and how do you fix it.
You're talking about the importance of finding a mentor, someone who can help you throughout this business. Did you have a mentor in this business?
I did. I remember starting out and working long hours, and they'd have these roundtable meetings, and it was pretty chaotic back then. I mean, they actually took us like to these steak places, and they'd buy the alcohol and talk about some opinions, with the alcohol in there. It got pretty heated sometimes, and then they stopped buying alcohol at these events. But it's funny. But you'd come in, you put in these long hours, and you'd see the same people at the end of the day that were doing the same exact thing I did. I remember a contractor said his advice was stay away from the noise. All the people, all the complaining. And that contractor was the one that sold me the Olathe stuff. And he despised FedEx telling him what to do all the time. And he got to be this grumpy old guy. And we laugh about it because I told him, I said, at one point you were the guy that told me to stay away from the noise. And he started laughing. He goes, now he is the noise. He's the one that's complaining all the time. So we laugh. We've got some good stories. There's a lot of good stories.
Can you think of one in particular? You want to tell us a good story?
Well, that's one of them. I'll tell you what, I remember, so contractors shut down routes all the time now, safety, there's safety issues, right? But back when we were running trucks, I remember it snowed a lot. And I was in Kansas City, had to drive to Topeka, which is an hour away. And drivers were getting together like, I'm not going to go out. It's too bad. And they're pressing you to go out and get the packages delivered. And we went out to breakfast. So we're not going to go out. We're going to go to breakfast. So we went to breakfast, and one of the contractors from Topeka went down to Topeka, and I just felt so bad. I don't want to be the one that doesn't get the job done. So as soon as I got done with breakfast, I went down there and delivered the stuff, and it wasn't as bad as I thought, but it's nowadays, and you just didn't set routes back then, and nowadays, there's more of a safety issue. I think you have to be smart about it. And the reality is that if it's snowed today, and we didn't have a lot of traction to get deliveries done safely, the weather's going to get better tomorrow. You just do what you can today to minimize the impact tomorrow, and then do the best you can. Really, just do the best you can, and get everybody buy into that. I tell my drivers that how do you know whether to make this attempt or not? And I said, well, when you get to the top of that hill or the bottom of that hill, or you see two cars, you don't know if you can. When you start questioning, like, should I do this? Then you already know, don't do it. Just don't do it. And I got your back. We're just not going to split hairs on that kind of stuff. I'll have my guys back, and it'll get delivered. But the expectation level for drivers is extremely high. They're videotaped in the station. They're videotaped in the trucks. And then you go to deliver to your house, and guess what? You got a Ring camera. You're watching. And yeah, they got it. We're not supposed to throw packages, but these drivers handle these packages so much, they know if it's a T-shirt, and they'll toss a T-shirt, and somebody will get it on tape, and they'll put it on Facebook. And I get it. I get it, but not everything is a complaint. These guys are working hard. And we're just trying to get them, the friction between FedEx and contractors is, pay. I'd like to pay my drivers more. I really would. I think that would help with safety. I think finding a way to communicate with FedEx effectively without it. There's a lot of contractors in that position that are really passionate about talking to the upper management in FedEx. And I think their passion comes out so loud that maybe the message is lost.
Interesting. Yeah. And Juan, you've been in this for so long. You've watched the business evolve over the years. In 2020, 2021, with the COVID pandemic, those were boom years. Everyone was staying at home. If you weren't already shopping on Amazon, you probably were during those years. Package volume soared. My company, we supplied a lot of trucks in those 2 years. And then 2022 was kind of a stark contrast, at least in the conversations I've had with people. In 2022, inflation started to take off. So the fuel, other consumables, labor, the prices of trucks went way up. Even as interest rates have gone up, the cost to finance those went up. And as FedEx service providers, you don't have, day-to-day, week-to-week control over hey, our costs have gone up. Well, we're just going to increase our prices, or we're just going to go out and hustle and sell more, like you might in another type of business model.
Right.
And a lot of people I speak with, 2022 was a particularly tough year. Was that your experience in 2022?
Yeah, I seen that happening. I knew that there was a lot of different industries that were providing bonuses, hiring bonuses, and promising higher pay. So what I did is we had kind of I would say that our drivers weren't at full capacity, but at that point I had to realize that we had to get our drivers to full capacity so we could pay them a higher rate. And so we had a meeting at all our locations that said, good news, bad news. Good news, you're getting a raise. Bad news is you're going to have to work for it. But guess what? Everybody's having to work harder for their money during that period of time. So really is just kind of at that point, we've already established, ourselves as trustworthy as company, the people that work for us. It's probably not what they wanted to hear, but, when they got paid, they liked it. So could we dip down below on our averages? Yeah, we could, but we have to be able to perform at our highest and our safest level possible. And FedEx is going to push that too. So I think your other podcast talked about using they have some other where you can hire someone, like you wanted to drive out of your personal vehicle, I could hire you to run out of that.
Yeah, the AVP.
Yeah. So we don't do that. We don't do the smaller trucks. I think personally, if you prove, they wanted us to do it. We had 1,000 small packages in one of our locations, and he said if you buy the high roof transit, you can run 250 stops in each one, and that eliminate. I'm like, that's perfect. If I do that for 2 years and have the perfect employees, and I lose 2 of them on the 3rd year, and I can't find somebody to replace them at that rate, and I went to tell FedEx, hey, look, I need more money because I can't get anybody to perform at that level anymore. FedEx is going to tell me to kick rocks. I mean, they don't care, right? I mean, they care, but I don't want to make it sound that bad. But once I've proven it that I can do it, then there's no going back. So I would caution chasing that. A lot of times you're trying to find the cheat code to make your margins better, but down the road it's going to hurt you because it might have been the perfect scenario and the perfect employees that you had, and if you can't duplicate that, then you're going to be in trouble.
Yeah, Juan, that reminds me of when most areas of the country started to overlap. Home delivery used to be its own segment, its own entity. And then they wanted to get rid of home delivery, have everyone overlap and do home delivery and ground in one area. But for a period of time, and maybe even it's still happening, but for a period of time, a lot of contractors I was talking with, they would have like a P500 step van driving down the street, passing a P1200, and their fleet, and this is just broad strokes, but maybe they had 8 P500s and 12 P1200s, 20 trucks, when really what they could do is have 17 P1000s and go to the middle, and you get to take a few trucks off the road. Is that kind of what you're talking about a little bit with the AVP, or was I
right? I think so. Basically I'm saying, I think FedEx has some good ideas. But I think they want you to run this super efficient. I think when they brought out DRO, they thought that we were running inefficient. And I think once DRO rolled out, they realized, wow, these guys are running pretty darn good. I think I agree with FedEx. I think as time goes, the economy is going to come back and it's going to take off. The challenge I think that's going to happen is that nobody's buying trucks right now. But if FedEx is trying to squeeze margins and say that I can run my business with X amount of money and we can take 2 or 3% off or whatever a year, that's fine. But guess what? Some of that money I was saving So when the opportunity did rise, I could grow either in another location or add more trucks. Maybe the plan when you talked about trucks and what the plan was, if you have a good mechanic, you keep your trucks as long as possible. If you and I've done that. But then I'm back down to, I probably want to keep my truck anywhere from 4 to 5 years. I'm probably putting about 20 to 25,000 miles a year on it, and then sell it because it still has value to somebody as long as I take care of it, and then just keep cycling it. So replace, 3-4 trucks a year. I think that was a plan, but since volume has slowed down, I've got extra trucks everywhere. So and then that was a whole nother thing. Trying to rent a truck, you could never get a truck for peak. So you put your name in for trucks, and at Ryder or Penske, and you think you're ready for peak because you had 10 trucks rented from him, and then they could only give you 3 or 4. And it's like, wait a minute, how am I going to, FedEx is expecting me to do all this stuff. So at that point, you're like, okay, I got to buy more P1000s. I got to get more. And then I think everybody went through that, bought a bunch of trucks, and then the economy kind of collapsed, and now everybody's got extra trucks. Everybody's probably got 5 extra trucks in their lot sitting around.
Now, earlier today, when you and I were talking on the phone, we talked about, things are slow right now, but that you're optimistic about the future. Could you tell us more about that?
So I think I like to focus on positives. So I think what we're doing is we're trying to make sure that we have developed the safety culture that we envision. I think with a lot of these new metrics that they want us to hit, safety is going to be a big part of it. So I hired a safety manager, and I kind of like him hauled back and forth. Can I afford to? So we hired a guy. I told him it was a 2 or 3 month trial. If it worked, then he'd keep the job. If not, maybe he doesn't want to do it, So on both ends, we'll both reach out after 2 or 3 months and see how it worked out. Well, the first guy didn't work out. He thought being a manager meant going home early. So that didn't work out. The second guy was on our team. I hired him because I was on the verge of hiring somebody just come out of school that was a safety specialist. But that would have probably cost me about $80,000 to $100,000 a year. And I really wasn't wanting to spend that. I thought I can develop that person myself. So I picked one of my employees, Lamont Johnson, and then he's been probably one of the key figures of turning around my safety in the Kansas City, Missouri station. I could tell right away when my drivers were complaining that Lamont's texting him all the time to put the seatbelt on. And they said they heard him the first time. I'm like, well, he's watching you. Did you not? He goes, well, I'm just going down the road. I'm like, look, FedEx, if that truck's moving, your seatbelt needs to be on. So he's doing his job and he's trying to help you. And then explain to them that if they have an accident and there's a fatality, guess what? That their family's coming after me and they're coming after FedEx because it can't be the driver's fault. There's no way it can be their. And guess what? They it's somebody's son, it's somebody's brother or sister, or it's somebody's family member that maybe if it's my driver, they pass away. It's like, I don't want to have that conversation. I just don't want to go down that road. So really explaining that kind of stuff to them. And a lot of times they think that, well, that can't happen to me. So you have to show videos to them of real life FedEx occurrences. And then it starts to sink in a little more. So it's taken time to get that culture. So I think, as when it's slow here, I think that's what we're focusing on, making sure that we have the right team. And we've added a few more pre-trip, post-trip, make sure we're doing that, even though that's kind of, if that truck goes out and has an accident, and it can't pass a DOT inspection, or it's not performing like it should, and they have a fatality in it, then we're liable for that. And then they're liable because they checked the box. So just educating, communicating over and over again. And generally, if you stay on them, they'll buy into it. They will. They want to be led.
So package volume's down a little bit right now. It sounds like you are viewing that as an opportunity to focus on some of the fundamentals you're talking about.
Sure. Catch your breath.
Yeah. Juan, we're bumping up against an hour. I really appreciate your time. Is there anything else that you want to talk about here at the end of our interview?
No, I would say, I think the mentor thing is probably the biggest, and be open to, suggestions from contractors that are running it. Business, us running a successful business is about making decisions, and sometimes timely decisions, but we try different procedures in all of our locations. And right now what we're doing is we are doing a daily, instead of having a weekly safety meeting, we're having a daily stand-up meeting for 10 minutes. It cannot last. I told my managers it cannot last more than 10 minutes, because we're having weekly meetings, and sometimes it lasts 30, 40 minutes. And the drivers, there's foam coming out of their mouth because they want to get out and deliver, and they think we're extending their day, and they're not hearing anything that we're telling them. So we're trying a different approach with that, and doing the daily stand up. And I think a camaraderie is starting to build up amongst our team that was already strong. So there's more buy-in, when we talk about, hey, look, why didn't you deliver this today? If we're reaching out to them on the daily basis of that, and my manager's actually taking it from the truck, then they're like, hey, our managers do care about service. It's not just lip service. So just really getting engaged, so I mean, there's so much. But if you're an owner, I think you need to be there. I would say for the first 3 years, you need to be there every day, because you have the vested interest, and you're going to see things different. You're going to see things different. It's funny. I sold my business to my son, right? And then it's like 2 months later, I was walking through the station, and he was watching me, and I had kind of a quick pace to myself, and I was mad because there was some tires that were below what I wanted them to do. And I have somebody in charge of checking those tires so they can, it's wintertime. We need to have the best rubber on these trucks possible. So I had this brisk walk to myself before our meeting, and my son looked at me, and he smiled. He goes, I've seen that look before. He goes, I'm glad I'm not on your team anymore. So he knew somebody was in trouble, but you don't know that if you're not there. And I think it's natural for your managers to slip a little bit, but there's got to be checks and balances, and we can't be afraid of them.
So Juan, last question. You've been in the business of delivering packages for going on 34 years. What does the future hold for you? Where are you going from here?
Well, who knows? I'll be here as long as FedEx wants me here. There's a lot of contractors that perform a lot better than I do. They know their numbers a lot better. I have a few numbers that I look at, but I don't deep dive as much as some of these other contractors. But I'm probably going to scale down. My daughters in the HR and so I've already sold a portion to my son, and my daughter and my son-in-law want a portion. So in a perfect situation, I'd like them to have half of every location that I'm in, of the three. But I don't know if, it's got to be their decision. I can't make it for them. But my daughter's more of a buy-in. My son is like, he's the devil's advocate. He'll tell me that's not what he wants, and then 3 months later, I thought we were doing half and half, and I'm like, when did you agree to that? So, but it's been like that the whole time growing up. So it's I understand them, they understand me, and we'll find a way for them. They're in good hands. They've got me to fall back on, and really it's about building relationships and just staying connected.
I think that's a good note to end on. Juan, I really appreciate you taking the time with us today. Thank you.
Ryan, thanks for having me. I enjoyed this a little bit more than I thought I would.
Great. Routing for Success is brought to you by AP Equipment Financing. In today's competitive market, it is essential to acquire the right trucks at a fair price and finance them in a way that makes sense for your business. Leveraging their extensive network of truck and van suppliers, the experts at AP Equipment Financing will help you locate the best deals on step vans, cutaways, panel vans, and more. Deliver them straight to your facility and finance them with low monthly installment options. Click the link in the description or visit apfinancing.com for more information. Routing for Success is an independent production of AP Equipment Financing and is in no way affiliated with or endorsed by FedEx Corporation, FedEx Ground, Amazon, or any other logistics company discussed herein. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Routing for Success.